Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Tyrone Nelson Jr.
Hi, I'm Bersabeh Kemaw.
Hi, I'm Moses.
And today we're going to be breaking down our favorite films that inspired us ahead of our latest film, Echoes of a Dream. I think there are a couple films that made me want to become a director. 13th was probably the number one on that list. Like, I remember seeing it, I think I was in high school when it came out and immediately fell in love. I think this is when Netflix was really starting to pour into their own studio productions. And I remember turning it on and being encapsulated by the story, but also the information there. And as I was building the company, one of the things that I've really valued is that we don't just take on any type of story, but we want to make sure that everything that we do here has impact. And I think Ava does a fantastic job with all of her projects. So I would say 13th. I think there are a couple other films like Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Really that almost chaotic editing style but it really tells a beautiful and magnificent story. There's so many, but I'm going to keep it at 13th as my answer.
It's not one particular film, but when I was younger, this might sound nerdy, but I used to always watch the behind the scenes, like even when they had I was watching VHS tapes. I would watch all the way through the entire tape. So I can remember specifically for Bambi, right? They use this technique for the animation called, I think it's multi-plane camera. And I used to think that was the coolest thing ever. And that's not necessarily it is post-production in a sense, because you're done with the script, you're just doing the animation aspect. But I think that's why I love just figuring out how to construct certain things and just do cool things with the editing techniques and the camera with the software, just learning different things and just trying new things. That's where it's all started for me personally.
I think that balancing the interviews and the motion graphics. Like when I was working with our editor Moses on how we wanted to tell this story, it was something that we really wanted to emphasize the importance of being able to show all of this information in a digestible manner. Because I know that nowadays, people's attention spans are short, so it's trying to bridge that gap of we have to get all of this information to you, because when you start to have some of that stuff watered down with just blocks of text, people forget it. So we wanted to make sure that the motion graphics was telling that story. So when we were in the editing suite and working through those, 13th was always just in the back of my mind of how they showed their motion graphics, and I wanted to make sure that was incorporated in our story. So I think 13th again is my answer there, of just trying to figure out how they had their visual style of balancing the interviews, historical context, and having a modern touch, blending those all together and then putting them through our film, Echoes of a Dream.
So I would say my experience as a journalist shaped the way I wrote this film, because in journalism, the thing that's really emphasized is structure and flow. And so writing this, I wanted to really ensure that, one, there was a structure, of course, but I also wanted to make sure that when the audience is reading it or watching it, so to speak, the flow was in chronological order, of course, but it was also entertaining enough to keep them engaged and wanting to get more out of the film. And so I would say, being a journalist, you think of those questions like, how can I keep the audience engaged? How can I make sure that, they're still interested? How can I ensure that everything that I'm writing is accurately depicted? So I would say that's definitely the ways that journalism played a role. I would say a couple things guided my creative decision. First and foremost, I would definitely say God. Anytime I write, I would always pray, whether that's in high school, college, essays, exams. I always just pray beforehand, because I know that though I'm a good writer, that's a gift that was given to me, so I want to go to the person that gave it to me. And so I definitely prayed before I wrote this film. I would also say another creative direction was just knowing the history of MLK and knowing the importance of being able to accurately depict that in the writing and in the film. And so the creative direction also played a role with the research that was done by my peers. All the archives, all the videos, all the things that I was sent definitely played a role in my creative direction for sure.
I would say the film that helped me with the pacing would probably be all of the 30 for 30s that I watched. I love watching 30 for 30s. Again, nerdy. I love watching documentaries. So I think just watching 30 for 30 all the time and watching how they pace it, how they bring in the facts, how they, you know, show the different statistics, different things in that nature. I think that's what helped me form like the pacing. I think other films help me shape the story when it comes to editing. I think they help when it comes to being able to balance showing factual information or delivering factual information and history with the more interesting or entertaining aspects. I watch, again, documentaries. I watch Untold stories on Netflix. They always do a good job of balancing this is what happened, giving it in order with the timeline, but also making it entertaining, drawing in the viewer and what they're seeing.
I made sure that it was told accurately simply because of the research that was given to me. All I did was take the research and then put it on paper. As far as it being impactful and powerful, I would say I didn't really have to do much. You know, the story of Dr. King and the civil rights movement itself is powerful and impactful. I also believe that, for me personally, I'm very passionate about this. And for me, it was just a matter of understanding that the things that they were fighting for then, we still are fighting for today, but in a different font. And so being able to ensure that I was telling the story of Dr. King, the civil rights movement in Richmond, and making sure that the impact and the power that it has was able to be put on paper and then turned into a film, I would say that was definitely a key role. I would also like to add on that, you know, the history of America and its relationship with Black people runs deep. And it's easy to think that things are old just because they're, you know, historical. But when you look around today, you can definitely see that those things are still being fought against, you know, underserved communities, food deserts, things of that nature, systematic oppression, and understanding that a system that was never made for Black people to succeed in is still accurate today. And so being able to write a film like this and being able to convey, again, that powerfulness and the impact was really important for me because, again, these are things that are still being fought against today, so.
Tension. I'm trying to think of sometimes where I was on the edge of my seat. I think the last season of Snowfall, figuring out like, is Franklin going to be able to survive this? Because like we've seen him go through so much and so many trials and tribulations and ups and downs. Seeing how they brought that to life, but I would probably say that and Joker. And because I really love the character development and how they make the characters feel so human and make the worlds feel so lived in. And I think that in art and in movies and in films nowadays, it's so important to make sure that people can see themselves in it. They can see themselves in that struggle. And I think that those two really do a fantastic job of driving that point home of making you feel like you're in the situation too.
The film that helped me balance that emotional aspect and trying to figure out how to balance it would be Good Will Hunting, which is probably my favorite film ever. There's no factual information within the film, but I think that is like one of the, I don't believe that anything is truly perfect, but that's the closest thing you can get to a perfect film. So I feel like I just use that film and just to watch how it balances the comedy, the emotional, the action. It has everything. And honestly, just watching that film just showed you how to balance everything. And then any Christopher Nolan, I suggest anybody watch anything Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan will show you how to balance anything.
A film that embodies my philosophy on leadership and activism, I think I have two. And they're nerdy comic book movies, but they mean something to me. So, Civil War and Black Panther. I think that T'Challa's approach in both of those movies were fantastic.
In my culture, death It's not the end. It's more of a stepping off point. You reach out with both hands and Bast and Sekhmet. They lead you into the green veldt where you can run forever.
That sounds very peaceful.
My father thought so. I am not my father.
And really shows the complexity, I think, about being black in this world, but definitely being black American, of having your predecessors making the decisions that they did, and you being the one that have to live with that, and trying to respect your culture that means so much to you, but not leave anybody behind and be exclusionary in that. I think that role really spoke to me and how I run things at my company, how we really took the approach of how we wanted to bring this film together. I really believe that, like, Black Panther, especially when he finally gets the herb and goes back into the ancestral realm and asks his father, why would you leave that boy behind? I think those complexities and those nuances that Ryan Coogler did a fantastic job baking into that character embodies my philosophy of how I lead today.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think there was a film that inspired me when it came to taking on this film and editing this film. I think MLK is inspiring enough to do an entire film on. I mean, MLK is one of the most important people in, I'm not even gonna say our country's history, in the world's history, because he studied, he's just incredible. Everything he stood for, everything he did, especially, and he didn't even live a long life. You know what I'm saying? He got taken off this earth fairly early in his life, and he just impacted all of us in such a special way. So I didn't even need a film to watch.
So I'm gonna piggyback off him. I do think that MLK himself, he's inspirational as is, and his history is so rich that for me, like he said, I didn't really need to look at anything else to be inspired. Again, just the archives themselves and the research that was done was enough to be like, this is really inspiring. And I wanna make sure that that's put on paper and, you know,
Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Our film Echoes of a Dream premieres September 23rd. Grab your tickets now using the link below to join us for the screening, or hit subscribe to stay updated when the full film drops on streaming.